We're going to talk about a transitioning veterans guide to compensation in the private sector. Now, let me go and introduce myself. First of all, my name is Bob Wheeler. I work with clearjobs.net. Besides being an account representative here, we're a job board and a job fair company that works with government contractors to find people security clearances. But in addition to my job as an account manager, I'm also part of our training team. I deal a lot with recruitment, with transitioning veterans, talking about things that way as well. I was in the Navy for 20 years. I retired in 2014. Still live down by Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. My son did 8 years in the Marine Corps and got out not long ago. My wife still works on base. So I feel like even though it's been 10 years since I got out, I'm still very much connected to that veteran community, which is always good. And we're going to talk about compensation because I think that in a lot of the times when you are in that transition piece, this is one of those really weird subjects that you're not sure about. A lot of veterans don't really understand, but they also don't know what questions to ask, nor do they know when to ask the questions. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with some basic terms. We're going to get into this stuff. I mean, I know we've only got about 25 or 30 minutes or so there's going to be a lot of things I'm not going to cover here. I actually hope that one of the things that we can do is bring enough things up to help you understand what kind of questions that you also should be asking when you're in your job hunt and when you should be asking those questions. So let's first start with something. Compensation is a word that means everything that company gives you in return for your time, your effort, and your energy. It's not just money. A lot of times people think that compensation is just salaries and the dollars, and that's what they're focused on. But especially in the private sector, compensation, and actually even in the military, compensation is all of those things that they give you in return for what you give them in that organization. So it's your pay and your benefits is what we're looking at there, the combination of those things. So before we get moving too far into your transition, you need to really kind of get a good grip on what it is that you currently have and where it's going and where it's coming from and what it means. A lot of times you'll hear this, and I would, if you were ever a recruiter, these are the sellable points of the military. And you know what, to be honest, they're pretty freaking good a lot of ways in what you're talking about here. You've got your basic pay that you understand. Now that's your taxable part. You also have all of those allowances that go into things, your housing allowance, your basic allowance for subsistence. If you have any special duty pays, maybe you're on a submarine, maybe you're out to sea, maybe you're jump out of an airplane, maybe you're a recruiter. There's lots of different ways that you can have special duty pay that's going to be going on. That's going to affect those types of things. And then you talk about that's the pay part. Then you've got your benefits. If you've grown up in the military the whole time, you might even take for granted the fact that not only do you get every federal holiday off, but you get more than that. I mean, most of my time is with the Marine Corps, and every holiday is a 96-hour weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, come back on Tuesday. That doesn't even factor in your 30 days of leave that you get to throw inside there. The healthcare, which you get, is free. And then you get all those other miscellaneous things that are part of your benefits. Again, you may not really recognize them, but things like the gym and stuff like that, they sold you that when you came into the military as part of your recruiters, but they're real. They really are tangible benefits. And so when you look at where you're at, factor all that stuff in, because now you're going to compare where you're at to where you're going and what you're going to be needing. But the big piece to remember here is the same amount of gross income is not going to be the same amount of take-home pay, because a lot of that stuff there was not taxable, and if you ever got a chance to get deployed to a combat zone, none of it was taxable for a while. So even though someone might say, well, my base pay is X, you get the same base pay on the outside, your take-home pay is going to be a little bit less, a little bit different, because now all of the money that you make is taxable for the most part. Really, it's a greater degree of it, let's put it that way. So let's talk about pay in the private sector. And it can come in different ways. You might get paid on an hourly basis. You might get paid in a salary, or you might have a commission if you're doing sales and things like that. Or it could be a combination of those things, especially if you happen to do a job where there's commission type stuff. There's something else that you hear called equity compensation. This is like stock options and things like that. This is one of the things when I kind of crowdsource some ideas from some of my veteran network of like, what do you wish you would have known about? A lot of the more senior folks, especially, talked about they had no idea what equity compensation was and stock options and things like that. If you're going into a entry-level position, that may not affect you at all. But if it's something that you're coming into a senior position, that could be something that's in there. And I'm not going to get into, like we said, we've only got so many minutes on this shorter presentation on what's good or what's bad about it. But just understand that if you're a senior level person and they start talking about stock options, there's different types of stock options. So it's not just a single thing. You really are going to want to ask the questions of what does that mean? If you've got a financial advisor, you might want to ask those types of things because that is a big piece of your compensation. There's also some things that a lot of companies will give out bonuses. And that's something that in the military, you got your pay and that's what the pay was. If you got a bonus, it was more time off. But, a lot of places will give financial compensation, monetary bonuses, and it might be individual. If you're doing something really great, at the end of maybe it's at the end of the year, maybe it's quarterly, but there's also a lot of places that might give team bonuses. If the team makes a certain goal, does a certain, finishes a project at a certain amount of time, or the company makes lots of money, you might get team bonuses. And so asking if those pieces are in that compensation is important. One of the reasons that an organization or a company might prefer to give bonuses as opposed to increasing your salary or your base pay type thing is because a bonus really does keep, you got to remember, organizations on the private sector, if they don't make money, they go out of business. So when a company pays bonuses, it's their way of saying, like, we're going to share some of the profits or some of the goodwill or the good times that we had with you, but they're not going to be locked into now we have to pay you, a bigger salary every year as long as you're here. So that bonuses is something that a lot of times companies like to use those for that particular reason. So those are three of the ways that you could be compensated financially through a private organization. Now, a couple times in these little presentations here, we're going to throw out some FAQs. One of the first ones I get is, when should I expect to talk about salary? You know what? It's going to be a lot sooner than you think. As a matter of fact, I talked to one recruiter. We've asked this question, and I asked her, I said, when do you talk? She says, it's not the first. This is where she's asking the question of what do they want to make? What do they expect to make? She said, it's not the first question I ask, but it's always in the first conversation that I have. Most organizations are going to have a pay band. They've already got it figured out of what kind of a frame they're going to be paying you in somewhere right and left lateral limits type things. Once they know you meet the basic technical qualifications, their next question is, can they afford you or not? Especially, and I know this is a lot of folks here at this particular conference are doing cybersecurity. It can be a very highly sought after technical skill, especially if you've got mid to senior level experience. If you're on the entry level, maybe not quite so much, but even then, once they know that you've got the basic skills, they're going to want to know, because they don't want to waste their time either. So they're going to want to know if they can even afford you or not. So next question. Well, what if I don't know what I'm expected to make? I mean, this is something that so many folks have when they are coming out. They're like, I just don't even know. What should I do? I'll tell you what, if they ask and you don't really know, the best thing to do is tell them what your take-home pay was in the military, and then ask them what the pay band is, because that's the kind of thing that they're going to want to tell you what it is. Most honest recruiters, they're going to at least give you a ballpark. They really are, because like I said, they don't want to waste their time either. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. And I guess if we were to wrap up these last two slides about the frequently asked questions, be prepared for that conversation sooner rather than later, because I think folks coming out of the military really have this, they don't know when it's going to happen. Is it going to be like at the last minute, or after I've been hired, now I can negotiate? Maybe you do the negotiation part at the end, but at the very beginning, be prepared to answer some of those questions. Another question we get, if they know I'm going to get a retirement from the military, are they going to lowball me on salary? This is actually a question that's pretty common, but the answer is really, it's very highly unlikely. They're not going to try to lowball you on salary because they know you've already got extra money coming on the side. If they know that, because they can tell by your resume, oh, she did 25 years in the Army, we know she's getting a retirement pay type thing. They're not going to try to lowball you on those things. There's a lot of deals that they have where they need to keep things kind of set. And actually, you're also going to see nowadays more and more salary for a job position is becoming more and more transparent. There was just a recent law that went into effect just like a few months ago in the state of Maryland that says that they have to show you what the pay range is for a job. And that's not just Maryland. I mean, the article that I was reading about it, there's already multiple states that are passing those laws. There's a lot of locations, specific cities that are passing those laws. And in the HR world, these are the kind of things that are only going to happen more and more. They're not going to happen less and less. So the transparency of the position that they're going to be paying you is going to continue to come, which is another reason they're not going to try to lowball you just because they know that you're getting a military retirement pay. Now, that was the money part. And really, the money is in some ways kind of the easiest. I think the biggest question was like, when do I start talking about it? But benefits are things that a lot of times when folks are getting out of the service, have a hard time just wrapping their head around some of the differences. Some of these benefits, you're going to see the term PTO, which is paid time off. You're going to see holidays. Holidays and PTO are not always the same thing. You're going to see things about retirement plans, such as 401ks. So if you've got a TSP, it's similar to that, but in a 401k, the company's also, they're pitching in some money on your retirement too. So it's a matching a lot of things. Medical, dental, vision can be different things that are benefits in there. We're going to break down a few of these pieces, a little bit more so that you can understand what they mean, what they are, what they're not, what kind of questions to ask. But again, there's going to be a lot more to this when you look at each individual job that you're going to want to talk to folks about. But now, PTO, one of the big things that's different between paid time off or vacation days between the private sector and the military is typically in the private sector, this does not count holidays and weekends. My son-in-law, who recently got out of the Marine Corps, is in his first year now of a job, was counting out how many days he had. He's like, well, we can't really go visit people for Thanksgiving and Christmas because I've only got 10 days of PTO. He was surprised to find out that all those days of like Christmas and Thanksgiving and the weekends don't count. He was so used to his Marine Corps days of counting out the Saturdays and the Sundays and the holidays and adding it all up. He's like, oh my God, I don't have as much time as I thought I did. So typically in the outside world, if it says 10 days, they're talking about 10 working days. But you also need to be prepared because you might have to work for a certain period of time before you get the full allotment of PTO. They might say, well, you get, a couple days the first year, you can have up to 10 starting the next year because they want to keep you around longer. In the military, you sign right up and you got 30 days of paid vacation time, right off the bat, assuming the commands would give it to you. But one of the big differences between what you had in the military, what you have in the private sector, something called employment at will. I mean, the military had you for however long your contract was, or your obligated service if you came as an officer program. In the outside world, you can quit whenever you want to for 99% of the jobs. You can just quit whenever you want to. So they don't want to give you too much. Some companies don't want to give you all this vacation time only to find out that you took all the vacation and got paid, but didn't do any work. So you may have to work a little bit in order to get those things. That's the kind of question that you might want to ask when they talk about things about we have so much PTO. Well, when does it vest? Some organizations might also differentiate between PTO and sick days. They might say, well, we had 10 days of paid time off and you got 5 days of sick days. And a lot of times in those organizations, the difference is a PTO day is something more along the lines of you scheduled it. Hey, I'm going to be out. We're going to go on vacation these days. Kids going to graduate from high school these days. Whereas the sick day counts more along the lines of like, I woke up and I feel like crap. Excuse my language. I feel bad. And I'm not coming into work today. They give you so many of those days too. And in these organizations, if you end up maxing these things out, eventually you might end up to a position where, yeah, they still give you the sick day. They just don't give you the money for not being there. That could be the big difference. One of the things that's on this slide here, I think if you're a transitioning veteran that you want to think about is it's a lot of people ask, I've got a bunch of VA appointments, because you might get out and you're still working through that process of going to get your VA certifications and any kind of disability finalization and stuff like that. You might want to ask the recruiter if you're starting out, how's that going to affect? Because they're coming. Maybe they can say, well, we won't count those as neither PTO or sick days. We might still give you some paid time off for those things, knowing that it's going to be probably front loaded in the first few months of working there. But that's a question to ask because they might tell you no. So you want to find those things out so that you don't end up with 5 sick days that within the first 4 months, you've already used up all your sick days for that year. All right. Now we're going to jump in to medical insurance terms because a lot of companies, not every company, but a lot of companies will offer healthcare insurance. And this is one of the biggest benefits out there. And I think if you're coming out and you're retired and you still got TRICARE, that can be a very good thing. We'll talk about that in a second too. But if you did less than 20 years, if you did 5 years or 6 years or 8 years, you're getting out without medical benefits. This might be one of the big things that you're looking at and saying like, that's an organization I want to work for. They've got medical insurance. Well, just because they've got it, there's different types of medical insurance. And so when you get into the part of looking at one job versus another, understanding what they've offered, and some companies might even offer a choice of different plans too. So the first kind you might see is an HMO, a health maintenance organization. This is basically just where, there's a place, they've got doctors, you sign up for that particular place, they assign you a doctor. This HMOs is the most similar to active duty TRICARE. If you were in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, Coast Guard, whatever, and you had TRICARE and you went on base to see a doctor, and then your doctor left, but they gave you a new doctor. That's what you had. You didn't have much of a choice, but you also knew that you're always getting taken care of. HMOs exist out in the private sector. They're very similar to active duty things. There's also something called a PPO, a preferred provider organization. Now, this is the deal where basically on the outside, you have your insurance. You have to go and find a doctor that accepts that insurance coverage. This is actually the most similar to if you were in the reserves or if you like a recruiter maybe and you were stationed away from a military base. It's also the most similar to retiree TRICARE. Retiree TRICARE is a PPO type thing. I've got the retiree stuff. So you've got to reach out and you've got to find a doctor that takes that. One thing to think about is if you've got the TRICARE still, when we get out, not every doctor takes TRICARE. Now, if you retire and you live in a place, I still live outside of Camp Lejeune, a lot of doctors take TRICARE. But if you end up in a place out there where there's less military folks, you may have a harder time finding doctors who take TRICARE. It doesn't, I'm not going to get into the details too much, but just know, TRICARE in the big picture doesn't typically pay for procedures as highly as other insurance companies do. And they also are a little slower in processing from the money perspective of the doctors. So you could end up in a place where there's doctors that just don't take TRICARE, and it's a business decision for them. So understanding what it is that your company that you're looking at is going to offer you, you could see HMO, you could see PPO. You could also see a point of service, which is basically where you're getting referrals and you've got to get referrals from your specialist. You could also see things called high deductible health plan with savings options where they tie this in with a health savings account. These are not seen as often. You might see them. The biggest piece I want you to take away from today's little class about healthcare stuff is there's different options. Do your homework on which ones they are. The HMO is the most like your regular TRICARE, and the PPO is the most like the reserve and retiree TRICARE. So those are some of your medical insurance things. Now, how much does this cost? Whether or not this is a slide I pulled from, the survey was put out about a couple of years ago, actually. So, that was put out last year, but the data stopped 2 years ago. The average cost for a person, from an individual, was about $111 a month for healthcare when you were going through your employer. For a family, it was $509 a month. So that's $6,000 a year. This is what it's costing you as an individual if you've got family healthcare, per year. That's you're paying out of your pocket before you even do anything. And again, this doesn't include things like copays and deductibles. This is just to have the health insurance. So it's a $6,000 difference in that final, when you're looking at those numbers of how much money am I making? Well, if of that money you're making 6,000 of it's coming right out from your, for your healthcare insurance, that's something to be thinking about. And if you're not, if you have to get healthcare, there's really not much you can do about these types of things. You can maybe negotiate a little bit of a better plan, or if you're looking at things. One of the questions that we do get is, if I have retiree healthcare, can I ask for maybe get a bigger salary? Say it's possible. Probably not. I've seen people with jobs where the company says that they will offer pay in lieu of benefits, where they'll do like a little bit extra hourly rate, but you're not going to get any benefits. If you're on a salary type thing, it's less likely. The bigger the company, the less likely it's going to be, because at that point, the big companies, they're buying their healthcare in such a big bulk that they're just like, they've already figured in everything. They're not really counting on that thing. Now, something that you can think about if you have retiree healthcare, a lot of smaller companies don't offer healthcare coverage. They just can't afford to do it. It's expensive. That slide that we just showed back there with how much money you paid, if you might have noticed, the bigger chunk was how much the company's paying for that healthcare. So a lot of small companies may not be able to afford healthcare. So if you've got it already through, whether it's through disability or whether it's through retiree healthcare, that does open up more options for you to look at companies that maybe they've got better salary, maybe they got other benefits, maybe it's just a better work environment if you like working for small companies. So more importantly with retiree healthcare is not so much how much more money can I make, but it really kind of opens up, I think, more opportunities for you when you're looking at different organizations to consider. All right. We're tracking along here pretty good. Can I negotiate for better benefits? Yeah, you certainly can, especially for things like PTO, the paid time off. You can negotiate for that, about getting more days, getting days sooner, getting them vested, stuff like that. You can also, negotiate for things like relocation assistance. That's a one-time benefit, but it might be the kind of thing that you say, hey, I'm stationed in Okinawa, Japan, and this job is in Atlanta, Georgia. What can we do, or something like that. you can definitely negotiate for better benefits. Now, the bonus tip on this is the more desirable you are, the more hard to find of a candidate you are, the more leverage you have. Cybersecurity folks that are out there, there's a lot of people that, they talk about what a booming industry this is, and it is, and then you can be hard to find. But the more specific that you are, the more seniority you have, the more likely you can do for some negotiation stuff. If they've got 25 people that have all looking at that entry-level job because you've got Sec Plus and you went to a cybersecurity boot camp, and they've got a bunch of people to pick from, you may not have that leverage. You can certainly kind of inquire about it, but it's not the kind of thing that you can really demand. If you're entry-level about some things and it's a really tough to fill position because it's a tough location, well, that might be something different. If they need someone to work at their, to work at a place in Utah that they have a hard time finding folks, or maybe it's an Oconus thing, that puts you now back in that more desirable, hard to find candidate because of the location. So just really understanding where you fit in those things is going to help you understand how much you can negotiate for better benefits. But if you've got the chance, you certainly can do it. So we said we had about 25 minutes to talk here. We've covered a lot of things when it comes to compensation. There's tons more to talk about. I wish that we had more time to break into things. I hope that I can leave you with a few things. Number one, I hope I can leave you with that pay and benefits is all of that stuff. Compensation is all of those things. The conversation is going to happen sooner than you think. Be prepared for it. Be prepared to at least understand what it is that you're making, what it is that you're taking home, more so than what it is that you're making, what it is that you're taking home, so that you can talk about those things. Understand that benefits are out there, things like the paid time off, the healthcare coverage. We didn't even get into things like education benefits or the fact that healthcare coverage may or may not include vision or dental, things like that. A lot more to ask those questions about, but you definitely want to learn to ask those questions. And you can definitely negotiate stuff. If you'd like to get a little bit more information on what we're a job board. We focus on people's security clearances. Because of that, we have tons of stuff about veterans. If you go to the clearedjobs.net page and you go to job seekers right up on the top, it opens up a page, and we've got a whole bunch of extra stuff on there, about writing resumes, picking resume words, interviews. We got another section that's listed for military transition as well that we can talk about. So more tips are out there. I really hope that everybody on this call or on this thing has a great transition. I think that the fact that you're out here doing these types of things is a huge, huge benefit to you. You're learning, getting those gaps. If you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to connect with any veteran job seeker. Drop me a note too. Say I saw you on the VetSec, and I'll be happy to help you out. I'm Bob Wheeler, clearedjobs.net. We've gone about 25 minutes like they said we could, so I will let you go. I will actually pop over here and just to see if there's any questions that came in that I might have missed. So there's also VA healthcare. Somebody mentioned VA healthcare. That's definitely true. When you look at the VA, you want to talk to the VA place that you're around. VA healthcare can sometimes be much more specific, but again, when you look at your compensation, that's what you can get, but it's not necessarily the best thing. Let's see here. Oh, Ashley, thank you for putting on that slide to 25. That graph is on the Google Drive. Thank you very much. So looks like we've got all the stuff covered, and I want to thank you guys and gals for being here. Hope you have a great rest of your session. Bye-bye.